Not really in a flap. Right, I'm going to use this microphone today because it's it's working. Can't be working. Right, so what I thought I'd talk about today is puffing. Okay, now I was going to do stitches, but that required me to keep rethreading, and I'm not going to rethread much, well, not at all, because I can't lift my arm up, or at least not to the thread cones. So what is puffing? Puffing is, do you see the turquoise and white strip there with the gathers in? It's kind of really cool, and it was used historically to make children's clothes bigger. So they put puffing panels in, and then as they grew, they'd make them larger. But it's actually a really nice technique, and it's very easy to do. And here I have it on this pinafore that I did. And actually, again, I've used the yellow with the red spot. And you can see I've got piping either side, which is quite common. I often do that. And then I have this really cute table piece that I made, oh, must have been 9 years ago, and I haven't finished it, so I don't want any comments on that. Of course, nobody's got anything they haven't finished. I actually really like it. I did hydrangeas, and it was another lady that teaches serging some years ago, and it was from her book. And can you see the dark purple? Can you see that they're all gathered up and puffed? I just think it makes for a really nice decoration. So that's what I thought we would do today. So I have it all set and ready to go. What could possibly go wrong? Right, let's see if I'm seeing any questions. You know, if I miss your question, which I sometimes do, I will go back and answer it on underneath. Okay. Right, so here's a bit I did, just experimenting. You see, this is a very small bit. And the reason for that is you can make puffing on the serger and you can make puffing on the Coverstitch. So it's really a question of which one you like and what effect you want. The advantage of the serger is you can pull up your threads. Okay, so let's just look at the serger first and then we'll go on to Coverstitch. So I am set for 4-thread overlock, and for the purpose of this, I actually put 2 different colors in my 01 needle and 02 needle, and that's because I'm likely going to pull up to make it more gathered. Because serging with this machine works on very fine material. If it's slightly stiff, you might not get such a good effect, but you can still pull it up on the serger. So let me put my machine on. It's looking very dark. There we are. And I will show you what I'm going to do. So as I said, I set up for 4-thread overlock, and just going to position it. And as far as the controls are concerned, I am pretty much, the only thing I've got different, or 2 things I've got different from regular overlock, is that I've got my stitch length down here on 4, and that's because just like on a sewing machine, you're going to pull it up and it's going to gather. So the larger stitch is going to make that more easy. But the other thing, and this is the important thing when you gather, is make sure you have your differential feed on 2. And what that does is it eats up the fabric in the feed dogs, grabs it and pushes loads into the needle to help it gather. Now, the one other thing, I mean, you can absolutely do this with a regular foot, but if you happen to own a gathering foot, then you can use that. When I say gathering foot, I mean shearing foot, okay? Now, I want to show you something just so you don't get confused. This is the regular foot. This is the shearing foot. Do you see what the difference is? There's only one small bit of difference, and it's this little hump here that helps to gather the fabric. helps to make the gathers. And some of you are going to say to me, well, what about the ruffler foot? Well, you could use a ruffler foot, but it's such a big foot that I tend not to. This is the foot I use when I want to gather something and sew it to another piece of fabric. So that is the ruffler foot. So I am going to use the shearing foot, and it's got BLG written on it. And it's very easy to get it mistaken with the regular foot, because from the top, other than that BLG and that BL, they look much the same. So I've got differential feed all the way up to 2, stitch length on 4. My width is 7.5, but that's not important. And what I'm going to do is show you how I gather it. So this, now you can cut some off if you want to. You know, I tend not to, but you can cut a slither off as you go. And what I want to do is make sure I'm feeding lots of fabric in. If I pull it, it's not going to gather, is it? Because I'm going to stop it from gathering as it feeds in. And I've got a very light touch on my fabric because, as I said, I don't want to stop it from gathering. And you can see it's gathered that side, and now I'm going to gather the other side, which has got a slight fold in it, but I think we'll be fine. So I'm making sure there's plenty of fabric going up to the foot, even giving it a bit extra really, and that's going to improve my gathers. I'm just going to repeat, it's not going to gather a very stiff fabric maybe, or a thick fabric. So what you're going to do then is if you pull either side like this, do you see how it gets its little gathers, and they kind of form straight lines, which is cool. So you could use it like that. For me, that doesn't have quite enough gathers. So what I would do is I would go to this end, and I told you that I use different colors in the machine for my needle threads, and that was because it just makes it easier to see them. So here we go. So I'm just going to pull on them, and that's going to gather them up, as long as I don't pull them at the bottom, which I won't. I hope I won't. So I can gather it up and make it more gathered. And of course I'd have to do the same to this side. So just grabbing hold of my 2 needle threads, just pull on the needle threads. Nothing else will do you any good. Just pull on the needle threads. So I've got my needle threads out, so it helps if they're a different color. And I'm just going to pull on those, just as I would on a sewing machine really. And it's going to gather it more. And then if I pull on the sides here, do you see how many more gathers it has? And you can even it out. I mean, the only thing I find when I gather it up is then I think, oh, perhaps I should gather it a bit more this side to my side, and it goes on a bit like that. So when I've got those all gathered up to perfection, there's 2 things you could do. On that table mat thing I did, the lady recommended that you sew it to a piece of fabric just to secure it. And actually, I think that's a good idea on something like a strip. And if I was going to do that, I would probably do that on my sewing machine, because I don't want any more thickness in my seam by running it down with my serger. Or you could just go to your sewing machine, put your hand on the gathers and just stitch down, and that will also hold it. Okay, now quite often I will use cording to sort of secure the gathers. And you know, one of the fun things about cording is if you put it under first, you can put it on top and it will hold them. And you can see I've got some pretty threads in here. Do you see that? And that's done with cover stitch. So let me have a look and see if I've got any questions. I'll bring you back round to the front. Hello to everyone. I didn't actually get to say hello to anyone, did I? Thank you for coming in. And thank you if you're watching a recording too. Can I do that for around my belly? Well, you know, the thing with it is it's not going to act like shearing. It's going to be secure. So it's really just a decorative thing. Like this is not going to stretch out and go back in. It's just loads of little gathers that make this pretty panel. Okay. And as I said, you can either finish it on your sewing machine to lock those folds in so that they don't give you trouble, or you could even sew it to a lightweight piece of fabric, as I did in that table runner. So what I want to do is I want to show you how it works with cover stitch, because in many ways I like the cover stitch better. It doesn't give as many gathers, but they're little gathers. So I actually have my applaud set up, because I have my applaud set up, and I'm not going to use the shearing foot because I have not changed my foot to accommodate another foot. So let me put that on and I'll show you what it does. But the other thing about it, and this is why I particularly like gathering on the applaud or the cover stitch, is that I can put a decorative thread in the chain looper and I get all those pretty stitches as it gathers. So let me just take you over and show you what I mean. Right, so I'm going to put this over here and go back to that camera. Right, so here's the applaud. It's set up for cover stitch, triple cover stitch, because the more stitches you have, the better the gather. And I've got my stitch length on 3. It doesn't have to be on 4 as it was with the serger, because I'm not going to be able to pull this up. It just will not pull up. Okay, it's a fixed gather. So I've disconnected my wipers, so they're not going to work. And as I think I told you, I have my decorative thread, which is an 8-weight thread, in my chain looper. So my decorative thread is going to be on the back. So for that reason, I'm going to sew this with the wrong side facing me. And I'm going to find a line on the machine to follow. And again, I don't want to pull on my fabric or hinder it, otherwise it won't gather. So you can see that it gathers, but it gathers kind of smaller stitches. And I'm going to do this side still from the wrong side. It sometimes runs away from you towards the end, and that's why I always make my panels bigger than I need. So in other words, if you're going to have a problem, it's going to be at the beginning and the end. So I always make them longer than I need, and then I cut them down to the perfect bit. But you see how much easier that is to set the lines. It's just more regular. And you see the decorative stitching? And then what I do when I come to sew this into either cording or 2 other bits of fabric, whatever, I'll leave those decorative stitches still showing. So, you know, so that I've got that pretty edge. So I think that's fairly fun. So remember, you can't pull up on these. You can't make them tighter. They're like little perfect pleats. This is the one I normally use. And if you have it the wrong side up and decorative thread in your chain looper, you can get those gathers. Of course, I'm on the applaud, so let's just put a wiper thread in and see what we get if I gather from the right side, because I obviously could get a decorative stitch with that. Remember, the left wiper is always higher than the right wiper. So I'm going to engage my threads. I'm going to grab something, and I've got to find a piece of fabric. Right. So doing the same thing but this side. And what I'm going to do is bring my needle down and make sure that my threads are all pushed to the back, because I don't want them getting caught around my wiper. So there's another option, it just gives you the wiper thread on the front, and you could do the other side, and again it would be puffing. But I actually quite like the back because it's a bit more solid when you put it in the chain looper. But yeah, fun. Right, I'm going to, whoops, I'm not going to move because everybody will get giddy. Right, so I'm going to come around and see if I have any questions. It's really a very simple technique, but it's a very effective one. So let me see, I'm not seeing comments, unless you're not writing them. I saw them at the beginning. Very cool effect. Okay, good. Thanks, Lee. Yeah, I think it is. And I'm just going to show you again. Now you've seen what it is. So this was on an apron, and we just did a band around the bottom. And then we finished it with cording. But also I used the cover stitch with the decorative thread and the chain looper. That's that decorative stitch you can see there. And then this was the little sundress, which I think is a live I did a while ago. It's on YouTube, making this little dress. And you know what I liked about that was, look, I even sewed the hem in. When I sewed the puffing panel into the dress, the skirt, I sewed the hem as well, so I didn't have to hem it. And I like a nice heavy hem. I think it just makes the dress hang well. So that's that one. That one I didn't use any cording. And then this one was done on the serger. It wasn't done with cover stitch. And you can just see my gathering along the edge. And then what I did was I sewed it. Undo this. I sewed it to a piece of cotton, and that just made it more stable. And I did that on my sewing machine because I didn't want to add any more thick weight on the seam. So it's pretty, isn't it? I do like it for something like this. I haven't actually done much since this, but I think it's a great place to put some puffing. Cute. So what else have I been doing? I have been working on my sweatshirt class until I realized my zipper was just too heavy for how soft the fabric was. So I reordered another one, but of course it takes a few days to get here. I am still checking my class on that jacket in the background. It's all done. It's such a long class. I have to go through it. And then after my brother's coming to visit me from England this weekend, and then he leaves on Monday. It's only a short visit. And then I'm going to make sure that the sweatshirt class is finished and get going on my tunic class, which I'm quite excited about because I have lots of dresses to make. But one of the dresses, I'm planning on putting a puffing panel in the bottom of the skirt because I think that will be really cute. And she was quite popular back in the day. So do I have any questions from anybody? If you've asked questions and I haven't seen them, I apologize. Oh. Yeah, there's a lot of creative possibilities. Yeah, and a lot of people saying they'll use that for sure. I think so. I just think it's really attractive. And yeah, texture. It's all about texture. I love texture. You like the cording with the puffing. Well, the cording with the puffing is really convenient because it stops the gathers from coming undone as you stitch along. It doesn't push them apart because it sits on the top and it holds everything in place. So it's just an easy way to finish puffing, but you could do it on your sewing machine and not have the cording. But you do need to lock those gathers if you're using the serger. Not so much with the cover stitch machine because they're all locked, so I don't have to reinforce that or anything like that. I would just sew that in to whatever I'm making. Let's have a look. It's really very pretty. And as I say, to get the gathers, you pull on the sides to set them all. But you'll notice too that the very beginning and the very end doesn't quite gather. So it's worth making it bigger and cutting it down. Well, I have put the notes up in the class for this puffing. They're only short notes. It's such a simple thing to do, but they're only short notes. And I hope you have. I think the biggest problem people have when they're gathering is pulling on the fabric so it doesn't gather. So remember, differential feed at 2 all the time and feed that fabric in, push it all in. So, right, I think that's about all the questions I have, but presuming I've seen them all. Let me just have one more flick at it and see. Oh, okay. I know this is not all for all, but Deb, did you do the class for Serger Club 3 redone? No, I didn't redo it. I put a note in the post, so read the note in the post because some people went on and they had no problem with it. So my advice is either use that or don't use it, whichever way it works for you. What size length strip do you start with? Is there a ratio? Now, it all depends how much it gathers. If it's the cover stitch, it doesn't gather as much as perhaps a serger stitch, but I would make a great big long panel and take out the best bit of the panel because that is sort of the easiest way. What is the cost of the sweatshirt class? It will be $29.50. So yeah. So that is about it, I think. One more. If I refresh, I get a few more questions. I like using different color thread for the needle. I know. Otherwise, you can't tell which thread it is you've got to pull. And if you pull the wrong one, it all goes wrong. So yeah. So listen, you'll all have a wonderful week. And as I say, my brother's coming, so I'm excited about that. And I will be back. If I say 2 weeks, it won't be the middle of Thanksgiving, will it? It might be just a few days before, but I think that's okay. So I will see you in 2 weeks if I don't see you before. Okay, thanks for coming in, and I will watch out for anything you post on Serger Sanity Projects, and do post up what you're serging on. Okay, thanks for coming. See you then. Bye.